Hey guys, I assume you guys are here to learn a little bit about the Porsche uh, Boxster first generation 986 or the Porsche 911 996 model. This Porsche had the M96 engine, um, had different displacement models, but they all shared very similar parts. So they all unfortunately have similar issues with them as well. I'm sure many of you are already aware of the IMS bearing issue. Really, no reason to discuss that issue here. I'm really here to discuss the unfortunate situation where people think that that's the only problem with these engines, and that's not the case. These engines, unfortunately, were not designed very well for whatever reason. I don't know if it was because of the time when it was built and designed. Porsche was going through a difficult time. They were potentially going to have to file for bankruptcy, and that was one thing that might have to take into consideration. They also obviously changed from air-cooled engines to water-cooled, so not sure if that might have caused a problem as well. But the unfortunate part about these engines is they were not designed very well. With that said, though, I definitely wanted to address the other issue so that people are aware that these engines are not a simple thing where you change the IMS bearing and it's good to go and it's going to be as reliable or perform as well as an other Porsche engine. Not the case with this one. This one has quite a few, but I wanted to highlight a few specific ones. And I'll put in the description all the common failures that these engines see, but I wanted to discuss the ones that ultimately require the engine to be fully torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. And when I say fully torn down and rebuilt, I mean even getting block work done on it. So let me go into that. The first issue that I would like to discuss is what a lot of people will often refer to as D-chunk. D-chunk is pretty self-explanatory here. That's where a chunk will literally break off of the cylinder lining and make a horrible mess in your oil pan. It allows the coolant and oil to intermix, and you get a substance that looks like a milkshake. That's what happens when the coolant and oil mix. Not good. Obviously, requires major work. But one thing that's very nice about this issue is that it is fixable. And unfortunately, to fix it, you are going to have to get major block work done on it. But that's required. You have to get that done. If you're going to rebuild these engines, you have to get it done. So with that said, the unfortunate part with these cylinders is even if you don't get that D-chunk, you can get what they call cylinder scoring. That's where basically there's not sufficient oiling in the cylinders, and that's one problem with these engines is the oiling was not the greatest. This is one issue where over time it's not a question of if, it's just a question of how much your cylinders have been scored. So that's something that no matter what, you could tear your whole block down and rebuild it using new parts. But the bottom line is these cylinders will be no longer round. They are more of an oval or egg-shaped. So that's another thing is, fortunately, it's fixable, and it does require new sleeves put in, and there's a company that does it. I think there's a few companies that'll do it, but they use a sleeve that's called Nicocel. Nicocel is or Nickies. They put those on, and it basically completely fixes these two problems as far as the ovaling or the D-chunk issues. Those are two major issues that unfortunately it does cause problems. This one's not catastrophic failure, the scoring, but obviously the D-chunk is. But the scoring will lead to, burning some oil and oil consumption and things like that. Now, an additional problem that this seemed to happen more on the earlier models. I think more of the 3.4 liters. But if I'm wrong, definitely please someone chime in. I'm sure it's probably leaked into the 3.6 liters as well. But the 3.4 liters seem to have this this phenomenon where the cylinder heads would actually start cracking a little bit. They're very small, but oil and coolant were leaking, and it did cause a problem where, unfortunately, again, the whole engine needs to be torn down. It is serviceable. It's something that people and companies have welded it and had success with it, but you do have to find a company that's good at doing this. It's not something that you can just take anywhere and have it done. So that's something that you need to be aware of as well. Other common issues that I can say are, timing chains. Timing chains can break. When that happens, it can damage the pistons can hit the valves. A lot of, obviously, things can go wrong. But for the most part, if you have a timing chain break, sometimes you can try to have it replaced. And there's only so many people that can really do that, too. It's going to cost you. But many times you're going to have the whole engine rebuilt, depending on how bad the damage is. Another common issue is the rod bearings, the rod bolts. The rod bolts, for some reason, unfortunately, can't withstand as much of the pressure of the higher revs. So many times they will literally let go, and you'll have a rod that breaks off of the crankshaft, and it can obviously damage the head as well as the cylinders, and it obviously requires a complete teardown. Another common problem is the scavenge pumps that are mounted to the both heads. Those can unfortunately lock up, and what causes those to lock up is debris in the oil. Sometimes this debris can be caused because of a failing IMS bearing. Or the oil wasn't changed regularly, but it's related to when debris enters the oil, and it unfortunately clogs up the one or both of these pumps. And unfortunately, what happens with that is it's connected to the camshafts. So when it locks up that camshaft. Cam gears can break. It causes the timing belts or the timing chains to break. So it causes pretty significant damage as well. So those are what I would call the major issues with these engines that can literally require a full rebuild. And it's one of those things that at any moment they can happen. It's not something that's just as, we changed the IMS bearing and we're good to go. No, you can change your IMS bearing, and right after you pick up your car and you start driving home, your timing chain or your cylinder can de-chunk. Any of those things can happen. So just be aware of these main things that can happen, and plan accordingly. But I will say, if you don't get a full rebuild on the engine, or the car that you're buying doesn't have a full rebuild, it's unfortunate you are rolling the dice, even if you get the IMS bearing replaced with a nice bearing. So if you have any questions or comments, please put those in the comment section, and I'll see what I can do. I'll definitely. I mean, if I'm wrong on some things, I'm definitely trying to learn as well. So, but just trying to make people aware of the potential catastrophic failure that can happen with these engines when buying a car. So, okay, I'll talk to you guys later. All right, bye.